Annabelle Thompson, a gorgeous and successful billionaire in her early 30s, had achieved everything most people could only dream of. But her path to success was far from easy. Annabelle was an orphan, raised in a crowded orphanage where resources were scarce and opportunities even scarcer. Despite her circumstances, she worked hard, determined to change her fate. Through sheer hard work, grit, and determination, Annabelle had built an empire. Starting from a small business selling fashion accessories, she grew her wealth by making smart investments and seizing every opportunity that came her way. Now she was one of the most powerful and wealthy women in Lagos, running multiple companies and living a life of luxury. But with her success came a price. Men were often drawn to her wealth and status rather than her heart. After another failed relationship with a man more interested in her bank account than her personality, Annabelle felt hollow. She had worked hard for her riches, but deep down, what she truly wanted was a genuine connection. A love that wasn't about her money. Sitting in her luxurious penthouse, Annabelle made a bold decision. She would step away from her glamorous world and live as an ordinary woman for a while. She needed to find someone who could love her for who she truly was. That night, she crafted a plan to go undercover as a poor person. Maybe then she would find the love she longed for. Annabelle Thompson, no longer dressed in designer clothes and luxury accessories, packed a small suitcase and left her lavish Lagos lifestyle behind. She traveled to a small, quiet town far from the bustling city, a place where no one would recognize her or her billion-dollar empire. She arrived at the town with only the essentials, determined to blend in and start fresh as an ordinary woman. After wandering the town for a bit, she came across a quaint little shop on the corner of a busy street. The shop was simple, selling groceries, small household items, and a few basic necessities. It was nothing like the high-end retail stores she owned back in Lagos, but it felt right. This was exactly the kind of place she needed to immerse herself in, a place where people wouldn't care about who she was or how much she was worth. The shop owner, Daniel, was a handsome young man in his early 30s. With a tall frame, kind eyes, and a friendly smile, he was well liked by the locals. He had taken over the store after his father passed away. Daniel wasn't rich, but he looked kind. Annabelle approached him, her heart pounding. She introduced herself simply as Anna, a woman looking for a job. Daniel, a bit surprised by the sudden request, asked her if she had any retail experience. She smiled, knowing she had more experience running stores than most people would ever imagine. But she played it down. "I've worked in a few shops before," she said, her voice soft and humble. "I'm a quick learner." Daniel hesitated for a moment, but there was something genuine about her. He decided to give her a chance. "All right, Anna," he said, handing her an apron. "You can start tomorrow. Welcome to the team." Annabelle smiled as she slipped on the apron, realizing this was the start of a new chapter in her life. She had successfully left her billionaire identity behind and was now just a simple salesgirl in a small town, working for a man who didn't know her past. Little did she know that her decision to work at Daniel's shop would change her life in ways she couldn't have predicted. It had only been a few weeks since Annabelle, now known as Anna, started working at Daniel's shop, and she was beginning to notice some troubling patterns. With her sharp business instincts, she could tell that Daniel's shop wasn't doing as well as it could. The shelves weren't always fully stocked, and customers seemed to come in less often than they should. It didn't take long for her to figure out why. Daniel was a good man, but he wasn't focused. Instead of putting his energy into his business, he spent most of his time distracted, chasing after women who didn't seem to care for him the way he thought they did. It was obvious to Annabelle that these women were only interested in what little money Daniel had, leaving him with an empty wallet and a broken heart. One afternoon, as she restocked some items, Annabelle overheard Daniel on the phone, laughing and flirting with a woman. He promised to take her to dinner that evening at one of the town's finest restaurants. Annabelle sighed, feeling a sense of frustration. She had seen this play out too many times in just the short time she'd worked there. If Daniel could just focus on his business instead of running after love, he could turn things around. But he was too distracted to see it. Later that day, Daniel's best friend, David, walked into the shop. David was everything Daniel aspired to be: successful, well-dressed, and confident. He was also undeniably handsome, just like Daniel, but there was something more polished about him. While Daniel's business struggled, David seemed to have everything in control. The two friends greeted each other warmly, and it was clear they were close. Seeing an opportunity, Annabelle quietly approached David after Daniel left to tend to some customers. "David," she said softly, "I know this might sound strange, but I care about Daniel. He's a good man, but I see him making mistakes that are hurting him. He's too focused on women who don't really love him. If he put that same energy into his shop, he could really build something great. I've been watching and he just needs to focus. Could you maybe talk to him? Advise him to stop chasing these girls and focus on his business first. When he's successful, the right women will come to him naturally." David listened carefully, his face serious. He glanced over at Daniel, who was laughing with a group of girls that had entered the shop. He sighed and turned back to Annabelle. "I've tried," David said, his tone heavy with frustration. "I've given him money countless times, hoping he would use it to improve the shop. But every time he wastes it, either chasing women or making poor decisions. I've known Daniel for years, and I've watched him throw away his chances. But he's my friend. I'll talk to him again, even though I've done it so many times before." Annabelle felt a pang of sympathy for both men. It was clear that David cared deeply for his friend, but also that Daniel wasn't making it easy to help him. She could see the frustration in David's eyes, but there was also loyalty, an unwillingness to give up on his childhood friend. "Thank you," Annabelle said, her voice soft. "I just hope he listens this time. He has so much potential, but he's letting it slip away." David nodded, his expression thoughtful as he glanced back at Daniel. "I'll have a word with him," he said. "Maybe coming from me again, it'll sink in this time. And I'll help him get back on track, but only if I know he's serious. I can't keep giving him money if he's not going to use it wisely." Annabelle smiled gratefully. "I think he just needs someone to shake him up a bit, to remind him what's really important. He's lucky to have a friend like you." David gave a small, appreciative smile in return. "I hope you're right, Anna. We'll see how it goes." Daniel had always been drawn to women like Linda, glamorous, unattainable, and dripping with confidence. Despite his friend David's advice and the little progress he'd made focusing on his shop, Daniel couldn't shake his old habits. He found himself falling head over heels for Linda, a local slay queen who turned heads wherever she went. Linda, with her expensive taste and sharp tongue, was the kind of woman Daniel believed would validate his worth. One evening, Daniel worked up the nerve to approach Linda outside a trendy lounge, hoping that his charm and persistence would finally win her over. He smiled confidently, trying to mask his nervousness. "Linda, you look stunning as always," Daniel said, standing tall. Linda glanced at him with barely concealed annoyance, her eyes scanning him up and down. "What do you want, Daniel?" she asked coldly. "I was hoping we could go out sometime," Daniel said, his voice almost pleading. "I think we could have something special." Linda's laughter rang out, sharp and dismissive. "You think I'm interested in you? Daniel, you're beneath me. You couldn't possibly afford to keep up with a woman like me," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "I don't have time for broke men." The words cut deep. Daniel's confidence crumbled at that moment, leaving him feeling small and defeated. He stood there speechless as Linda turned and walked away without a second glance. Crushed, Daniel returned to his shop, the sting of rejection weighing heavily on his shoulders. Annabelle, who had noticed his mood, didn't pry, but could tell something was wrong. Daniel tried to hide his sadness, but the disappointment was written all over his face. The next day, something unexpected happened. Daniel's phone buzzed, and when he glanced at the screen, he saw Linda's name. His heart skipped a beat. She had unblocked his number. Eagerly, he answered the call. "Linda?" he said, his voice hopeful. "Daniel, I need some money," Linda said flatly, without any hint of warmth. "Can you help me out?" Daniel's heart raced. She was reaching out to him. Maybe this was his chance to win her back. "Of course, Linda. Come by the shop and I'll give you what you need," he said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and desperation. Later that day, Linda arrived at the shop, dressed to impress as usual. Daniel, eager to please her, quickly gathered the shop's earnings, the entire sum they had made that week. He turned to Annabelle, who was busy organizing the shelves. "Anna," Daniel called out, his tone urgent. "Can you help me count the money for Linda?" Annabelle's heart sank as she watched Daniel hand over all the money in the shop to Linda. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. After all the progress he had made, Daniel was throwing it all away for someone who clearly didn't care about him. Annabelle's face remained calm, but inside she felt a mix of frustration and pity. Linda took the money without so much as a thank you and strutted out of the shop, leaving Daniel standing there looking like a man who had just given away everything for nothing. That evening, Daniel sat in David's car, feeling defeated. His best friend could tell something was wrong. "Daniel, what's going on? You look like you've been hit by a truck," David said, concerned. Daniel sighed heavily. "Linda came by the shop today. I gave her all the money we made this week." David stared at him in disbelief. "You did what? After everything I told you?" I thought she might finally like me," Daniel mumbled, unable to meet David's eyes. David shook his head, frustrated. "Daniel, this is exactly what Anna was talking about. You're too focused on women who don't care about you, and you're letting your business fall apart because of it." Daniel didn't respond at first, but David continued. "Anna's a good person. She's been working hard, and she's smart. She has more common sense than most people I know. She's been helping you hold this place together, and you don't even realize it." Daniel thought back to how meticulous and dedicated Annabelle had been since the day she started working at the shop. She was different from the women he usually chased, humble, hard-working, and caring. "You're right, David," Daniel said, nodding slowly. "Anna's been incredible. She's organized, she cares about the shop, and she's always looking out for me." David gave him a meaningful look. "Maybe instead of chasing after women like Linda, you should start paying attention to the woman who's right in front of you. Anna's not just a good worker, she's someone you should consider dating. You need someone who will build with you, not tear you down." Daniel stared out the window, deep in thought. Could David be right? Was he missing something with Anna? After the heartfelt conversation in the car, Daniel and David decided to head to a nearby bar to unwind and grab some drinks. The atmosphere was relaxed, the soft hum of music and the low chatter of other patrons filling the air as they settled into a booth. "You know, you've really got to start thinking about your future," David said, taking a sip of his drink. "You can't keep chasing after women like Linda forever. You deserve better." Daniel nodded, though his thoughts kept circling back to Annabelle. She had been such a constant presence in his life recently, quietly working hard in the background while he wasted time on fleeting attractions. The more he thought about it, the more he realized David was right. Annabelle was someone special. After a couple of hours, Daniel decided to call it a night. He parted ways with David and, on his way home, remembered that he needed to pick up some supplies from the shop for the next morning. He stopped by the shop, unlocked the door and quietly stepped inside, not wanting to disturb anything. But as soon as he entered, something unusual caught his eye. In the far corner of the shop, lying on a makeshift bed of flattened cardboard boxes and old blankets, was Annabelle, fast asleep. The dim light from outside cast a soft glow over her, and Daniel's heart sank. He hadn't realized it before, but now it was painfully clear. Annabelle didn't have anywhere to go. She had been sleeping in the shop this whole time, without a home or a bed to call her own. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. How had he been so blind to her situation? Daniel stood there for a moment, watching her as she slept, her face peaceful despite the harshness of her reality. He couldn't leave her like this. She had done so much for him, for the shop, without ever asking for anything in return. It was time he did something for her. The next morning, as Annabelle was tidying up the shop, Daniel approached her gently. "Anna," he said softly, "I saw you sleeping here last night. Why didn't you tell me you didn't have a place to stay?" Annabelle froze for a moment, embarrassment washing over her face. "I didn't want to bother you," she said quietly. "I didn't think it was a big deal." "But it is a big deal," Daniel said firmly. "You've been helping me so much, and I didn't even realize you were going through this. You shouldn't be sleeping in the shop. It's not safe or comfortable." Annabelle looked down, unsure of what to say. She had gotten used to making do with what she had, but Daniel's concern touched her. "Look," Daniel continued, "I know my place isn't much, but I have a room. You can stay with me for now, until we figure something out. I don't want you living like this." Annabelle hesitated, but Daniel's sincerity was hard to ignore. He wasn't offering out of pity. He genuinely wanted to help. After a moment, she nodded. "Okay, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it." Later that day, Annabelle packed up the few belongings she had, and together they made their way to Daniel's small one-room apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and warm, with a cozy bed and enough space for both of them to live comfortably for the time being. Daniel set up a small corner for Annabelle to sleep in, making sure she had everything she needed. Meanwhile, across town, Linda was living her life in a completely different world. After collecting the money from Daniel the previous day, she had hit the club with her friends, enjoying the high life she craved. Dressed in a designer outfit, she danced the night away, her laughter echoing through the loud music. That morning, Linda sat with one of her closest friends, Juliet, at an upscale cafe, recounting her wild night. "I told you these guys are too easy," Linda said with a laugh, flipping her hair back as she sipped her cocktail. "Daniel gave me everything in his shop yesterday. Can you believe it?" Juliet raised her glass in a toast, her smile wide. "Girl, you're living the dream. Keep them running after you." Linda's phone buzzed with notifications, pictures from the night before, messages from other men trying to get her attention. She was on top of the world, enjoying every moment of her carefree, glamorous life. "Men will always be men," Linda said smugly. "As long as you know how to play the game, they'll keep handing you whatever you want." Juliet nodded, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "You're a queen, Linda. Keep doing your thing." The two women laughed, completely oblivious to the struggles that Daniel and Annabelle were facing in their simple yet meaningful lives. Annabelle woke up early in Daniel's small but cozy apartment. The morning sunlight peeked through the window, warming the room. She looked around and smiled. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. Daniel's kind gesture of letting her stay here touched her deeply. He barely knew her, yet he went out of his way to make her comfortable. As she walked into the small kitchen to prepare tea, Daniel joined her, scratching the back of his head sleepily. "Good morning, Anna," he said with a smile. "Good morning, Daniel," she replied. "Thank you again for letting me stay here. It means a lot to me." Daniel waved his hand. "It's nothing. You've done so much for the shop already. I'm the one who should be thanking you." Annabelle blushed slightly, but she didn't say anything. She admired Daniel's humility and generosity. He wasn't perfect, but his kindness shone through his flaws. At the shop, Annabelle began to introduce small changes. She noticed that some items were placed in hard-to-reach corners, so she rearranged the shelves to make them more accessible. She also suggested offering small discounts to attract more customers. "Daniel, how about we put up a sign outside that says, 'Buy two, get one free' for the snacks?" she asked one afternoon. "That's a good idea," Daniel replied, nodding. "Let's try it." Within days, customers started coming in more often. The shop's sales began to pick up, and Daniel couldn't help but notice how much Annabelle was contributing. "Anna," he said one evening, as they counted the day's earnings, "you've been amazing. I don't know how I ran this place without you." Annabelle smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I'm just doing what I can," she said simply. But inside, she felt happy. She loved seeing the shop thrive and knowing she was making a difference. Meanwhile, David began to spend more time at the shop. He often dropped by to check on Daniel, but his eyes always seemed to linger on Annabelle. He couldn't help but admire her humility and how hard she worked, even in such a simple setting. One day, as Daniel stepped out to make a delivery, David approached Annabelle. "Anna, I've been meaning to talk to you," he said, his tone serious. Annabelle looked up from the shelf she was organizing. "What is it, David?" "I think you're incredible," he said. "You're hard-working, kind, and honestly, I've never met anyone like you. Daniel might not see it, but I do." Annabelle froze for a moment, surprised. "David, I appreciate your words, but Daniel is my boss and my friend. I'm not interested in starting anything with you." David sighed, but Annabelle continued. "If you care about Daniel, help him instead. He needs a friend who will guide him to make the right choice, not someone who distracts him from what's important." David looked at her for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "You're right, I guess I got carried away." Annabelle smiled gently. "Thank you for understanding." While Annabelle was helping the shop thrive, Daniel was still stuck in his own thoughts. Linda had blocked him after their last meeting, and he couldn't understand why. He kept checking his phone, hoping for a message, but none came. "Why won't she talk to me?" he muttered one evening. Annabelle noticed his frustration but didn't say anything. She wanted to tell him to let Linda go, but she knew it wasn't her place. Instead, she focused on making the shop even better. As the weeks passed, Daniel began to see Annabelle in a new light. She wasn't just an employee, she was someone who truly cared about the shop and its future. But Daniel's heart was still tied to Linda, and he couldn't let go of the hope that she might come back to him. Annabelle sat quietly with Daniel in his small apartment after another long day at the shop. He had noticed how tired she looked and offered her a cup of tea. As she sipped slowly, Daniel couldn't help but feel a wave of curiosity about her. "Anna, you've been here for a while now," he began softly, "but you've never really talked about where you came from. I do not know much about you." Annabelle hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she also couldn't tell him the full truth. Taking a deep breath, she decided to share part of her story. "I've been through a lot, Daniel," she said, her voice low. "I grew up in an orphanage. It was hard, there wasn't enough food, and we didn't have much to look forward to. But I told myself I'd work hard and make something of my life." Daniel leaned forward, his face filled with concern. "That must have been tough," he said. "It was," Annabelle admitted, "but I kept going. I knew I couldn't let my circumstances define me. That's why I've always worked hard. It's the only way I've known how to survive." Her words touched Daniel deeply. He could see the strength in her eyes, and it made him admire her even more. "You're incredible, Anna," he said. "Most people would have given up, but you're so strong. I wish I had half your determination." Annabelle smiled, but inside guilt began to creep in. She wasn't telling him everything, and as her feelings for Daniel grew, the weight of her secret became harder to bear. A few days later, Daniel ran into Linda outside a local cafe. He had been running errands and wasn't expecting to see her, but when he did, his heart jumped. "Linda," he called out, walking up to her with a hopeful smile. Linda turned, her expression instantly sour. "What do you want, Daniel?" she snapped. "I just wanted to talk," he said, trying to sound confident. "I don't understand why you've been avoiding me." Linda scoffed, crossing her arms. "Avoiding you? Daniel, do you hear yourself? You're a nobody. I don't have time for someone who can't even afford to buy me dinner at a proper restaurant." Her words stung, but before Daniel could respond, Linda did something that shocked him. She slapped him across the face. "Don't embarrass yourself by trying to talk to me again," she hissed before turning to leave. At that moment, Annabelle appeared. She had been walking toward the cafe and saw the entire scene. Fury bubbled up inside her as she marched straight to Linda. "What is wrong with you?" Annabelle demanded, her voice shaking with anger. Linda turned to Annabelle, her eyes narrowing. "And who are you? Another poor nobody trying to defend this loser?" "I'm someone who doesn't stand by while my boss gets humiliated for no reason," Annabelle shot back. Linda laughed mockingly. "Oh, please, look at you, a wrecked poor salesgirl with no class. You think you can talk to me? You're not even worth my time." Annabelle stepped closer, her fists clenched. "You think you are the only person in the world because of your fancy clothes, but it doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just makes you shallow and cruel." Linda sneered. "Keep dreaming, little girl. You and your poverty-stricken boss will always be beneath me." With that, she stormed off, leaving Annabelle and Daniel standing in the middle of the street. Daniel stood silently, his face still red from the slap. Annabelle turned to him, her anger softening into concern. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Daniel nodded slowly. "I don't know what I ever saw in her," he admitted. "She's not the person I thought she was." Annabelle smiled sadly. "Sometimes we hold on to people who don't deserve us. But it's never too late to let go." Her words seemed to resonate with Daniel. For the first time, he felt a sense of clarity. Linda wasn't worth his time or energy. "You're right," he said firmly. "I'm done with her. She doesn't deserve another second of my attention." Over the next few days, Daniel threw himself into the shop with renewed focus. Annabelle was by his side, encouraging him every step of the way. Their bond grew stronger, and Daniel found himself drawn to her more and more. But Annabelle's guilt also grew. Every kind word from Daniel, every smile made her feel like she was betraying him by not telling him the truth about her identity. One evening, as they closed up the shop, Daniel turned to her. "Anna, I don't know where I'd be without you," he said. Annabelle's heart ached. She wanted to tell him everything, but the fear of losing his trust held her back. Instead, she forced a smile and said, "I'm just glad I can help." Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Annabelle. Over the weeks, she had become more than just a helping hand at the shop. She had brought new life to his struggling business, stood up for him when he felt small, and encouraged him to believe in himself again. One evening, after a busy day at the shop, Daniel couldn't hold back his feelings any longer. They were sitting together outside his apartment, watching the sunset. "Anna," Daniel began, his voice shaky but earnest, "I need to tell you something." Annabelle turned to him, her heart skipping a beat. "What is it, Daniel?" He took a deep breath. "I've never met anyone like you. You're kind, hard-working, and you've changed my life in ways I can't even explain. You've stood by me when no one else did. And I've realized, I don't want to imagine my life without you." Annabelle's eyes widened as Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple silver ring. "I know I don't have much to offer," he continued, his voice full of emotion, "but I promise to love you, to be there for you, and to build a life with you. Will you marry me, Anna?" Tears filled Annabelle's eyes. She had always prayed that Daniel would look her way, as she had long harbored feelings for him. But she never expected this moment. Daniel's sincerity and love touched her deeply. For a moment she hesitated, her secret weighing heavily on her heart. But as she looked into his eyes, all she saw was genuine love. "Yes, Daniel," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, his face lighting up with joy. They embraced, both feeling as though they had found their true home in each other. News of their engagement spread quickly through the small town. Annabelle braced herself for Linda's reaction, expecting jealousy or a snide remark. Linda soon heard the news. "They deserve each other," she said with a shrug, sipping her coffee as she spoke to a friend. "Anna is a poor lowlife like him. I am just glad he will finally stop stalking me." One Saturday, Annabelle and Daniel decided to go to the nearby market together. They also decided to stop by a small supermarket on their way. It was a simple, quiet outing, and Daniel couldn't stop smiling as he pushed the cart while Annabelle added the item. As they stood near the checkout line, a well-dressed woman approached Annabelle, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "Miss Thompson," the woman exclaimed, "oh my goodness, it's you. I've missed seeing you at the boutique. Your taste in fashion is unmatched." Annabelle froze, her smile fading. "Boutique?" Daniel asked, looking between Annabelle and the woman. "Yes, I am a regular at one of Miss Thompson's luxury boutiques in Lagos," the woman said proudly. "She has an eye for the most exquisite pieces." Daniel's confusion turned to shock as he stared at Annabelle. "Anna? What is she talking about?" Annabelle's face turned pale. She knew the truth was out. "Daniel, let's talk about this somewhere private," she said softly, taking his hand. Back at the apartment, Annabelle sat down with Daniel, her heart pounding. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she began, her voice trembling. "But yes, it's true. My real name is Annabelle Thompson. I'm a billionaire. I own several boutiques in Lagos." Daniel stared at her, his expression unreadable. "So this whole time you were toying with my emotions?" Annabelle nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I wanted to find someone who would love me for me, not for my money. That's why I came here. That's why I became Anna." Daniel stood up, running a hand through his hair. "You lied to me, Annabelle. You made me believe you were someone else. Do you have any idea how that feels?" "I'm sorry, Daniel," she said, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you without losing you." "I need time to think," Daniel said quietly, walking out the door without another word. That evening, Daniel met up with David at a quiet cafe. As he sat down, he still couldn't shake the anger and confusion he felt. "I can't believe she lied to me," he said, his voice heavy with frustration. David looked at him calmly. "Before you get too upset, Daniel, I think you should also remember you are also keeping secrets. Hmm, Daniel signed, his tone impatient. She is not the only one keeping secrets. I think it's time you told her the truth about who you really are, David added. Daniel froze. He had been so focused on Annabelle's deception that he hadn't even considered his own. David leaned forward. Or have you forgotten who you are? You're Daniel Marshall, CEO of Daniel's Enterprise, one of the biggest oil companies in the country. You're a billionaire pretending to be poor, just like her. Maybe she also has her reasons, just like you. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, guilt washing over him. I didn't think it would matter, he admitted. I wanted to live a simple life for a while, to get away from the pressure of running the company, but now, I don't know what to do. David smiled faintly. It seems to me that you and Annabelle have more in common than you realize. She didn't lie to hurt you. She lied because she was searching for something real. Just like you. Daniel nodded slowly. You're right. I need to talk to her. I need to fix this. The next day, Daniel went to Annabelle's apartment. She opened the door, her eyes red from crying. Daniel, she said softly, stepping aside to let him in. I need to apologize, Daniel began. I reacted badly, and I didn't give you a chance to explain. But before we go any further, I need to tell you something. Annabelle looked at him, confused. I'm not just a shop owner, Daniel admitted. I'm Daniel Marshall, CEO of Daniel's Enterprise. I've been pretending to be poor to get away from my life as a billionaire. And David, he's not just my friend, he's my secretary. Annabelle stared at him in shock. You're a billionaire? Daniel nodded. I didn't tell you because I wanted to live a simple life for a while, but now I realize that keeping that from you wasn't fair. Annabelle's lips trembled, and then she laughed, a mix of relief and disbelief. So we've both been pretending, she said. Daniel smiled. It seems so, but if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that what I feel for you is real. I don't care about your money or your past. I care about you. Annabelle's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. I feel the same way, she said. Daniel reached for her hands. Then let's start fresh. No more secrets, just us. Annabelle nodded, her heart full. Just us. Annabelle and Daniel sat together on the small couch in her apartment. The air was heavy with emotion, yet it felt lighter than ever now that their secrets were out. Daniel held her hand gently, his eyes filled with curiosity and care. Annabelle, he began softly, I want to know more about you. The real you. Why did you come to this town? What made you leave the life you had behind? Annabelle sighed, her gaze dropping to the floor. It wasn't just one thing, Daniel, she admitted. It was everything. I've always been surrounded by people, but most of them only saw me for my money and my status. Men would approach me, act like they cared, but eventually their true intentions would come out. Daniel's brows furrowed. That must have been so hard. It was, Annabelle replied, her voice trembling. But the worst was my last relationship. I thought I had finally found someone who loved me for me. We were even planning to get married. She paused, taking a deep breath. But then I found out he had a wife and 3 kids. He'd hidden them from me the entire time. Daniel's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. That's terrible. How could anyone do that to you? Annabelle shrugged, trying to keep her composure. When I found out, I felt so broken. I had trusted him, let myself believe that I was finally going to have a real connection. That was the final straw. I knew I needed to get away, to start fresh, and figure out if there was any chance of finding something real in this world. Daniel reached out, lifting her chin so their eyes met. I'm so sorry you went through that, he said sincerely. You deserve better. Annabelle smiled faintly, touched by his genuine concern. Thank you, Daniel. After a brief silence, Daniel spoke. You're not the only one who's had struggles with relationships, he said. In my world, it's hard to find people who are honest. Most of the girls I dated in the past were shallow. They only cared about what I could give them or how much I could spend on them. Annabelle nodded, understanding all too well. It's exhausting, isn't it? Feeling like no one sees you for who you really are. Daniel smiled sadly. That's exactly why I came to this town. I needed to get away from all of it. The fake smiles, the constant pressure, the lies. I thought if I lived a simpler life for a while, maybe I'd find something real. Annabelle tilted her head. So David isn't just your friend? Daniel chuckled. No, he's my secretary. And the other tenants in my little apartment. They're my security team and my cook. I brought a few of them with me because, well, I needed a few helping hand. But I didn't tell anyone else who I really was. Annabelle laughed lightly, the sound filling the room. It's funny, isn't it? We were both pretending, trying to find something real, and here we are. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes locked on hers. Maybe we found it. Their faces were inches apart now, and Annabelle's heart raced. She had been guarded for so long, but with Daniel everything felt safe and real. Slowly, Daniel closed the distance between them, and their lips met in a soft, passionate kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of honesty, vulnerability, and a promise of something new. When they pulled apart, both were smiling, their hearts full. I've never felt like this before, Daniel admitted. With you, it's different. Annabelle touched his cheek gently. I feel the same way. The next morning, as they shared breakfast in the little apartment, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted to one of concern. Is everything okay? Annabelle asked. It's an urgent business matter, Daniel explained. I need to travel to Benin for a meeting. It's important. Annabelle nodded, though a pang of disappointment tugged at her chest. How long will you be gone? A few days at most, Daniel replied, but I'll call you every chance I get. Annabelle smiled, though she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Safe travels, Daniel. He leaned in to kiss her forehead. Thank you. Take care of yourself for me while I'm gone, okay? I will, she promised. As Daniel packed his bag and prepared to leave, Annabelle watched him with a mix of pride and longing. They had shared so much, and now she was certain of one thing. She didn't just care about Daniel, she was falling in love with him. The sound of Annabelle's phone ringing startled her as she stood outside a luxurious hotel. She glanced at the screen and smiled when she saw his name. Picking up, she pressed the phone to her ear. Daniel, she said warmly, her voice full of excitement. How's your trip going? It's going well, Daniel replied, his tone lighter than she expected. The meeting went better than I thought, but there's something important I need to tell you. Annabelle's heart raced. What is it? I've been thinking, Daniel began. We've spent so much time waiting and pretending in our lives. I don't want to wait anymore, Annabelle. As soon as I get back, I want us to pack up and go to Lagos. We need to get married, immediately. Annabelle gasped, her mind reeling. Are you serious? Completely, Daniel said firmly. I love you, and I don't see the point in delaying. You've changed my life, and I want to start building our future together as soon as possible. So get ready. We're heading back to Lagos the moment I return. Annabelle couldn't hold back her smile. I'll be ready, she promised, her heart swelling with joy. Good, Daniel said. I'll call you again before I leave Benin. I can't wait to see you. As the call ended, Annabelle's excitement bubbled over. She couldn't believe it was all happening so quickly, but deep down she knew it was the right decision. Meanwhile, across town, Linda was seated at a corner table in one of the most exclusive bars in the city. She sipped on a glass of champagne, her eyes scanning the room lazily. Beside her sat an elderly man in an expensive suit, his fingers adorned with gold rings. Linda, my dear, the man said, leaning closer, I have something exciting to share with you. Linda arched an eyebrow, intrigued. What is it, Mr. George? I've been invited to a wedding, George said, a wide grin spreading across his face. But not just any wedding, a high-profile wedding in Lagos. Everyone who matters will be there. Linda's interest was piqued. A wedding? What's so special about it? The groom is one of the richest men in the country, George explained, a billionaire, and he's marrying another billionaire. It's going to be the event of the year. Linda's eyes widened. A billionaire marrying another billionaire? That sounds incredible. Why are you invited? George chuckled, clearly pleased with himself. Because I've done business with the groom's company before. Securing that contract was what made me a millionaire. Now I'm hoping to land another deal with them, and attending this wedding will give me the chance to make a good impression." Linda leaned in. "I can't reveal all the details yet, but I'll tell you this. It's Daniel Marshall, the CEO of Daniel's Enterprise," Mr. George added. Linda nearly choked on her champagne. "Daniel Marshall, the billionaire oil tycoon?" "The very same," George confirmed, nodding. "I can't miss this wedding for anything. It's an honor to be invited, and I need to make the most of it." Linda's mind raced. She had heard of Daniel Marshall, of course, but she had never imagined she'd get the chance to attend a wedding of this caliber. "Mr. George," Linda said sweetly, placing a hand on his arm, "you wouldn't leave me behind, would you? I'd love to accompany you to such a prestigious event." George chuckled. "Of course, my dear. You'll be my +1, my sugar baby. But you'd better prepare yourself. It's going to be a grand affair, unlike anything you've seen before." Linda's excitement bubbled over. She had never attended such an exclusive event in her life, and the thought of mingling with billionaires and high society thrilled her. "Oh, I'll be ready. This is the kind of thing I like to hear," she said confidently, already imagining herself in a stunning designer gown, walking among the elite. As Linda prepared for the high-profile wedding, Annabelle was busy packing her things, her heart full of anticipation for the next chapter of her life. Neither of them knew that their paths were about to cross in a way that would change everything. The wedding venue in Lagos was nothing short of breathtaking. Towering flower arrangements framed the entrance, while sparkling chandeliers hung elegantly from the ceiling. The guest list was exclusive, filled with prominent business moguls, celebrities, and elite members of society. Annabelle stood in a private room, her heart racing as she adjusted her wedding gown. The intricate lace and shimmering beadwork made her look like a queen. She glanced at her reflection, still amazed that this day had come. "Are you ready?" a voice asked. She turned to see David, dressed sharply in a black tuxedo as Daniel's best man. "Yes," she said with a soft smile, "more than ready." As the soft music began to play, the doors opened to reveal Annabelle walking down the aisle. Guests turned in awe, whispering among themselves about her beauty and grace. Daniel stood at the altar, his eyes fixed only on her. When she reached him, he took her hands in his voice barely above a whisper. "You're stunning." "You're not too bad yourself," Annabelle replied, her smile lighting up the room. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt vows, laughter, and a few tears. When the officiant finally pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd erupted into applause as Daniel and Annabelle shared their first kiss as a married couple. Meanwhile, Linda arrived at the venue with Mr. George. She wore a glamorous gown, determined to make an impression. As she stepped into the grand hall, she paused to admire the decor. Her eyes landed on a large photo of the bride and groom displayed near the entrance, and her heart stopped. The groom was Daniel, and the bride was Anna. Linda's mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. "This can't be," she whispered, her legs trembling. "Linda, are you okay?" George asked, noticing her pale face. She forced a shaky smile. "I'm fine. I just need to confirm something. My eyes must be deceiving me." Inside the reception hall, Linda spotted Daniel and Annabelle mingling with guests. Daniel looked sharp in his tailored suit, his hand never leaving Annabelle's. The sight of them together, so happy and radiant, was too much for Linda to bear. She quickly excused herself, clutching her chest as she stumbled out of the venue, her mind racing as she connected the dots. Daniel is Daniel Marshall, the billionaire oil tycoon. Back at the hotel, Linda paced her room, her breaths shallow and uneven. The realization of what she had lost hit her like a wave. "I was so blind," she muttered to herself. "I rejected him, humiliated him, and now look at him. He's everything I ever wanted." Her breathing grew heavier, and before she could call for help, her vision blurred and she collapsed onto the floor. When Linda woke up, she found herself in a stark hospital room. An IV drip was attached to her arm, and a nurse stood nearby, checking her vitals. "You're awake," the nurse said gently. "You fainted." Linda's voice was weak as she whispered, "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake." Tears streamed down her face as she replayed her interactions with Daniel in her mind. She remembered how she had insulted him, called him worthless, and dismissed him without a second thought. "If only I had seen his worth sooner," she murmured. "If only I hadn't been so shallow and selfish." The nurse patted her hand. "Rest now. Though I don't know your story, but I know dwelling on the past won't change it. You just have to make better decisions in the future." But Linda couldn't stop the flood of regret. She had let go of something real, something meaningful, and now it was too late. Back at the wedding, Annabelle and Daniel danced together under the glow of soft lights. They were surrounded by friends, family, and the warmth of true love. Daniel leaned close, his voice tender. "I still can't believe we made it here." Annabelle smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Neither can I. But I wouldn't change a thing." As the music swelled, they held each other tightly, ready to face the future together, united by honesty, love, and lessons of their past. As Linda lay in her hospital bed, her tears slowed, but the pain in her heart remained. She had once been so sure of what she wanted, yet her greed and pride had left her empty. "I lost him," she whispered to herself. "I lost everything." And as the world outside continued to move forward, Linda was left with nothing but her deep regret.